meeting with the session Make PowerShell a Real Solution in 5 Steps with Heiko Brenn. My name is Fredrik Wall, and I'm one of the 4 organizers of the PowerShell User Group Sweden. Before Heiko from ScriptRunner will start his session, I will do a short presentation of the user group. We started back in 2009 as Scandinavia PowerShell User Group. And in 2012, we changed the name to PowerShell User Group Sweden. Before COVID, we had like 1 or 2 meetings per year. And this is the first virtual meeting. And we hope to have a meeting in May about PowerShell 7. And we are organized on Facebook, mainly on Facebook. And we have a web page, pugs.nu. And this session will be posted at YouTube. That was the short story of the user group. And now it's time to say welcome to Heiko.
Yeah, thanks, Fredrik. Thanks for inviting me to having this premiere of having a virtual meeting for your Swedish PowerShell user group and to talk a little bit about our solution and make PowerShell a real solution in 5 steps. So I have a few slides, but then I also want to go into a demo environment and show you a little bit around the solution. So the title itself already sounds a little bit provocative. And I know that I think in your Facebook group, there was some discussion like, wait a minute, PowerShell is already a solution. So what is this all about? And so I hope I can bring some answers to that. Then of course PowerShell already itself is a great platform for automating all kinds of stuff. And but there are still some challenges if you look at PowerShell, how it works natively, so to speak. And so what I will show you today is how you can take PowerShell as a foundation and really have a PowerShell management solution that enables you to do more with PowerShell, and also to include more people into using PowerShell, maybe without even knowing that there's things going on underneath with PowerShell. But that's especially that's exactly what ScriptRunner is all about. So the agenda is like a twofold. So one thing is really I want to a little bit start with looking at, okay, what are maybe the challenges when you use PowerShell, or the way you use PowerShell today, maybe, and then how you can really make it a solution and unlock the power of PowerShell really across your complete organization. Maybe the QR code here is just leads you to my GitHub repo where you can download the presentation. And yeah, we're also gonna have at the end of the session, we're gonna have a little raffle. So everybody who has registered, that obviously all of you, because you're here, we're gonna have a little raffle, and we're gonna give away 2 Amazon gift cards worth 25 euros each. And so that's gonna happen at the end of the session. So hopefully you will stay until the end to see who is winning these gift cards. And so yeah, I want to start with shortly introduction into, okay, what we are actually, what is ScriptRunner, and so we are into PowerShell management. So the idea of ScriptRunner is to simplify the way you develop, you manage and delegate PowerShell scripts. That's the basic idea. So this is part of our team. This is me. So you can reach me on different channels, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, GitHub, via email, phone me, whatever. And we are pretty much into a lot into activities all around the PowerShell community, and also helping people with maybe starting with PowerShell. And one thing that we are doing is we have a PowerShell poster, a PowerShell cheat sheet that you can put on your office wall, and that helps you with your day-to-day business. If you want to know, like, how is the AD, what kind of AD command how is the pipeline working, what can I do if I want to do something with PowerShell and WMI, for example. So you can just go to this website and order this. So we're going to send this poster to you. Actually, it's going to be 2 because it has 2 sites. So you can use it for both functionality, for example. And yes, of course, there is get help, exactly. But sometimes it's nice to have something maybe really like I have here on my office wall and look at it and say, okay, this is the command that for these are the data types that I can use, for example. So so that's us. And so that's ScriptRunner. And my name is Heiko. I'm with ScriptRunner like for 2 years, and I'm in the IT industry for almost 30 years, administrator, consultant, product manager, whatever. And so yeah, let's take a look at what kind of maybe challenges are there when it comes to using PowerShell. And these challenges might also change along the lines and depending on where you are on your PowerShell journey. Are you starting with PowerShell when there is the question, okay, where can I start? How can I learn? What kind of resources I can look at, like the community like this one, of course, is a great start. And then if you're more advanced, it more becomes like questions like, okay, how can I organize and standardize my scripts and the way I'm writing scripts and the way I'm using the scripts. And then maybe later on, it's like, okay, how can I enable other people to really use my scripts? Because I don't want to be the guy who always has to run the script to spin up a new VM or to create a new user, because it would be nice if this recurring task could be done by somebody else. But maybe today I have an issue there because of security reasons. I don't want to make people in help desk global admin in my Azure subscription or in my 065 tenant or something like this. And so what I see when I talk to organizations using PowerShell, sometimes, not all the times, but I would say pretty frequently, a picture like this comes to mind, where like, okay, yes, we're using PowerShell and we have our scripts here and there, and the people who wrote the scripts, they know exactly where to go to if they want to do something, let's say with Exchange or with Active Directory or with SQL or something like this. But if you think about, okay, but this could be somebody else who wants to use that script, then it's like, okay, where is it? Where's the latest version? Is it in an email? Is it somewhere in a folder structure or whatever? Yeah, or in Git maybe. But that's really there are many different situations here. And what we also see is, like, let's say outside of this PowerShell expert circle, there's some kind of PowerShell know-how bottleneck when you think about, okay, I would like to give this to somebody in help desk or maybe other people, and then, but okay, they may be not familiar, they're not feeling familiar with being on the command line and typing and whatever. And so this might be also a roadblock for really kind of using PowerShell on a broader from a broader perspective. And the other thing is that we see, or which is a challenge, is really about having the credential management or centralized credential management. Now we know there is the secrets management module now coming from Microsoft, but still it's like, okay, maybe you have a password service in place, and how do I enable others to use a script? But of course, not giving them my credentials and not give them credentials for privileged permissions and stuff like that. And these are just a few examples. As a result, typically it's really like, okay, PowerShell is something that's just used by the experts who wrote the script, who have the knowledge. I think we have somebody not muted. Would that be the case? Yeah, I'm just okay. Yeah. So. And so from our perspective, this really leads to, okay, the potential that we see in PowerShell really remains untapped, which means the great things that you can do with PowerShell with your scripts is really, the usage is really limited, right, to a certain group of people. And so the idea of ScriptRunner is, if you will, which is kind of democratizing PowerShell. And the question is, okay, what do I need to do that? What are the things that would be there to change the picture that we just saw, where you have all these different tools somewhere, into something that's kind of more well organized, and something that maybe the whole organization can make use of. And so it's, from our perspective, it really starts with standardization. It's on, and this of course it has different aspects. One is how to write scripts. Do all your scripts have a proper synopsis with the parameter descriptions, and are you using centralized library scripts for your functions and stuff like that? And it's also about, of course, making sure everybody who is going to use the script is always using the latest one that has been hopefully tested, and then being provided to somebody so they can use it. And one of the key things for achieving all that having PowerShell on a broader scale is really centralization. So bringing all the things that you need to run your PowerShell scripts into a central place, including the credentials, the scripts, the modules, which of course also plays an important role when it comes to standardizing the whole process. And then one of the big challenges typically is really how to make it easy for people who are not deep down in PowerShell, VS Code, whatever, and coding every day, and which means like, okay, how could I change a script into something like this, where it's just a user interface in a web browser, it's just an input form in an existing self-service portal maybe in your organization, which means somebody who is working with this here on the right side definitely doesn't have to know anything about PowerShell, because it's just about getting the job done and having some input parameters and having some top-down selection possibilities. So hopefully these people cannot do things the wrong way. And then in the background, it is still, at the end, it is a script that's being executed, but it's the whole infrastructure behind it is just hidden. And so, which means really a user just can work with that. And there's no need to just really explain them how PowerShell works and stuff like that. So this is one of the things that we think is important. So you get that PowerShell out to other people. And then what's also, of course, an aspect here is about monitoring, about knowing what script ran at what time, who triggered it. And trigger could be, maybe it's a user, but maybe it's triggered by a scheduled process, or maybe it's triggered by a REST API from a third-party system. And to having all this information about what's going on with PowerShell, which also means the integration part of really enabling workflow systems, ITSM system, monitoring systems to kind of trigger scripts that are managed centrally here in a centralized and standardized way. And so the question here is, okay, how can you achieve that? And this comes back to this, okay, 5-step approach, where we say, when you use PowerShell together with ScriptRunner, it's like centralizing the scripts, centralizing the modules, which also, of course, means synchronizing that with your GitHub repos or with your TFS or your Azure DevOps, where your CI/CD pipeline goes on and your code management. But at the end, the scripts are that you want to use really for you or for other users are in a central place. You can manage them with a web user interface. You can use tagging to find the right scripts and stuff like that. And as I said, sometimes it's depending on where you are on your PowerShell journey. You might already have all the scripts that you need, but maybe in other cases you think, okay, it would be cool if I would have some sample scripts that I can use to start, or to get maybe into another platform, to use PowerShell for Azure or for Exchange Online or for SQL or something like this. And then what you can do and what we offer here on our GitHub repo on github.com/scriptrunner is our action packs that are hundreds of scripts, and I'm going to show you that in the demo when I'm switching, where you see a lot of scripts for all kinds of platforms on premises or in the cloud, and for all kinds of use cases where you can just take these scripts, download them, use them for yourself, for whatever use case you want to use them. And it might, so let's say if you are already advanced in PowerShell, that it still might be interesting maybe to get some inspiration about what could you do with PowerShell on top of what you already have done so far. So that might be an interesting part for you as well. The second step here is really thinking about the credential and the permissions. And credentials means, as I said, centralizing the whole concept and all the information. Could mean using the Windows Credential Store, or which is also could be an option here, is using maybe already existing password servers, which means, of course, that enables you to, if you're using password servers, you probably have things like password rotation and stuff like that. And then in this case, when there is a script that wants to establish a connection to your Exchange server or to your Azure subscription, then this credential is being queried in real time. So get the right information at that point in time, not stored anywhere locally. It's just there to establish the session, to get the job done, to run the scripts in this back-end systems. And which, of course, it means an even more centralized aspect and concept of using PowerShell with this credentials that are coming from a password server. So in our case, at the moment, we're supporting 3: CyberArk, Pleasant, and Psychotic. There will be also support for the secrets management. There is an experimental one at the moment, which unfortunately doesn't work anymore because Microsoft changed some bits and pieces in their architecture compared to the beginning when they developed it. So we have to kind of redevelop it. So that's why we're not supporting the current one, but we will. That will be there. And of course, security plays an important role. And there's another thing that we offer. So if you want to get information about all the built-in functionality when it comes to security in PowerShell, you can get this PowerShell security ebook. It's 140 something pages. It covers all the built-in stuff, GIA, constraint language, credential handling, and stuff like that. So if you're interested in that, again, you can go to our website and get that ebook. It's really some in-depth information all around the aspect of using PowerShell in a secure way. Now, the credential part is one thing, and then the other thing is if we think about maybe delegating the execution maybe to somebody else, again, maybe help desk, maybe even end users. Then, of course, the question is how would that be possible? And so if I'm zooming in here a little bit into that picture, is like when there is ScriptRunner used together with PowerShell, ScriptRunner is the only instance that's actually running the scripts. Though it's not the user, it's always the ScriptRunner instance. So which means ScriptRunner is the only instance that needs to have access to your backend systems, no matter if it's on premises or in the cloud, which means, of course, that simplifies the whole process again, and of course, makes it more secure, because also only this instance needs to have access to the credentials. So that, so we call this here the execution proxy layer, so to speak, because that's really where the scripts are executed, where the credentials play a role, establish the sessions to the backend system. On the other side, if we look at the user over here that you might want to enable to maybe spin up a new VM, start an onboarding process, maybe somebody in HR should be able to create an out-of-office notification if somebody calls in sick, for example. So this user doesn't have to have any access to this backend systems over here. And so they don't need to have any permissions, because all the things that you want these people to be able to do, you manage in ScriptRunner. So here in ScriptRunner, you delegate the different tasks and say, okay, these people should be able to do this and to do this. That again, of course, means it's very secure, because you don't have to worry about, okay, do I have to make this person admin somewhere in my Azure subscription or in my Office 365 tenant or whatever? The answer with ScriptRunner is no, because they don't need to have any access to these backend systems. And that, of course, makes it, again, pretty secure. And then if we think about this kind of people that we have in mind for giving that scripts, so to speak, or these use cases to maybe help desk, then it has to be easy, because you don't want to train them how PowerShell works and all that. And so what happens in this stage is that we look into the scripts, and we take whatever we find there and transform that into a web user interface, which means we look at the synopsis. So things like really parameter descriptions are becoming interesting and important, because they become what you see here on the right side as a description for the parameter, which means on the other side, if at the moment you're maybe just not doing it because you think, why should I do it? There's no benefit. In combination with ScriptRunner, there is a benefit, because if that's already there, the web user interface that we create automatically without any additional code from your side becomes easier, this user interface, because the user knows, okay, this is the parameter for the name of a team in this case, or for the description and the members of this team, which is this picture here, this screenshot. And what it also shows is that if you know the new team commandlet, for example, or any other commandlet, of course there are additional many more parameters in the background. So, but what happens here is we only show 3 of them, which means only the ones that really needs the attention of a user, where somebody should type in the name and the members and stuff like that. And so everything else is still there in the background. So like in this case, like, okay, what security settings, GIFs, do I want to allow GIFs, yes or no? Public channels, private channels, whatever, maybe even the owner, or in this case, even the name of the channels are standardized. So, which means you can manage, what is there based on your standards, and the user cannot change it, they cannot see it, and only the things that really where the user has to make some selections or whatever, then that's what you see here in the user interface. And that makes it easy for the user, so hopefully no errors, and it gives you the possibility to make sure everything else is being processed according to your guidelines, to your the way you want it to be executed afterwards. And so step by step, you can take particular any kind of task, any kind of use case, and delegate them to your users. And it might look like this. So here we have 6 tiles. Each tile represents a use case. And then maybe another user maybe has maybe just 2 tiles. Others maybe have 20 because they have other things to do. And maybe it's just growing over time. And then again, of course, we talk about integration and the 3 ways how scripts could be executed. So one would be manually, user, or scheduled for housekeeping processes. And the third one would be, okay, you want to use ScriptRunner as a centralized hub for all PowerShell activities. So maybe even if there's a monitoring system that supports PowerShell somehow, where you would put the scripts over there and then also the credentials over there. Instead of doing that, and then maybe that with 5 other systems, you would do that centrally with ScriptRunner, and then using the REST API, the connectors saying, okay, if there's a monitoring system and there's a sensor that detects an error, and the solution is running a script that maybe restarts a service or spinning up a new VM or whatever, then this system talks to ScriptRunner saying, okay, this is the script we want to run. These are the parameters, these are the values. And then that's happened automatically by having these 2 systems just talking to each other. And so that's when really you take this solution and make it part of your infrastructure and maybe all your processes that are going on. Yeah, so with this, I would switch to my demo environment. I see there is another question regarding a password state. I have to say, I haven't heard about this solution yet. So we are not supporting that at the moment. We're constantly looking at this password server market, so to speak, and if there are solutions coming up that customers are asking for, then we are enhancing that. So we started with one actually 2 years ago. Now we have 3. So they're going to be this credential management support as well, which is quite cool because I think we already have connectors coming from the community for additional password servers besides the Azure Key Vault, obviously. Okay, password state best one. I'm going to take a look at it actually to see what we can do there. All right, so I would switch to my VM. Where is it? Dun, 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 dun. All right, here we are. All right. Okay, so just to give you a little round trip about what I just showed you on this nice little colorful slides. So it's really it all starts with the scripts, right? So so here I have all my scripts, 1100 something scripts, which by the way, I haven't wrote all of them. Actually, most of them are really coming from what I mentioned early on, which is this GitHub repo that we have. And if I don't have any connection issue, I can show you that. Let's see if we are lucky. Yeah, here we are. Whoops. All right. So here we have these action packs. And here you can see we have scripts for different platforms. Let's go to Azure, for example. Here we have the different components for compute, for example. So to create a new Azure VM, which I want to show you later on, is like this is the script, which shows, well, what does it show? We're following the best practice approach. So yes, we have a synopsis and we use it pretty heavily for the description and for the parameter descriptions. And what you already can see here is that we already here, we add some additional value, which means you could have multi-language support. Like if somebody switches the user interface from German to English in this case, or maybe another language, then the parameter descriptions will be in the right language. And you can add your additional language packages as well if you want. And then of course we have the parameter block, just normal stuff, PowerShell standard. And then what you see here, right here, and I'm going to show you that as well, is we are having this additional array of information where you can just say, okay, I want to control what kind of message a user sees when something went wrong or something went okay. And we have other information there, variables that you could use for finding out, okay, from which IP address an action got started, who was the user, and stuff like that, which helps you with, just within your scripts to control what should happen if somebody does something from maybe a network segment that, oh, this shouldn't be allowed from doing from there, or you have a different behavior, for example. All right, so so this would be something, okay, you can have your scripts from there. And what you also might realize here, we recognize if a script contains functions, because then if you have functions, then you can decide if you want to work just with a particular function or with the whole functionality of a script, for example. And let's say if I want to just see my Azure scripts, that would be that one, or for Office 65. So we have a tagging system in the background that enables you to really find exactly what you want to do it and with what you want to work at the moment. And the second part here is, the second step is the credentials, right? So we need to have credentials to establish the connections with PowerShell. So in my case here, I have credentials that are stored locally, and I have, for example, this one here that is being managed on a local Pleasant server. So which means if I'm going into this configuration here, there is no credential, it's just the ID of the credential. So ScriptRunner will take this ID when there is a script that wants to connect to Exchange and asking the Pleasant server, okay, please, we need the credential that is valid at the moment to establish this connection. What you also see here is that, for example, talking about PowerShell 7, we also, of course, if you have your SSH keys to connect to your Linux machines, you could do this as well. And as I said, so here we have this experimental secrets management module, which we kind of have to throw away because, as I said, Microsoft has changed the architecture, so we have to rebuild it, but it will be there in the near future. And so this is credentials, which means, of course, one of the goals is we don't want to have any credential information in our scripts, right? And that's why we have it here centrally. The other next step is then, of course, it's about, okay, what kind of backend systems we would like to establish connections to. And coming back to this Exchange example just now, here it's like, okay, this is the backend system, and this is the credential that is always going to be used when there is a script that wants to connect to Exchange, which again means all this information is not in the script. You don't have to have this PS session stuff going on in your scripts, because this is being done here in the configuration. So it kind of simplifies your scripts down to the real business use case, the business code, so to speak. And you can establish all kinds of and create all kinds of course, targets. So it could be an Office 65 connection target, where you decide what kind of endpoints, what kind of services do I want to use. If I'm using Exchange Online, the V2 module, and I'm already switched to certificate-based authentication, you could do this, for example. And you could have, if you have an environment where you want to do things on many different tenants, of course you could do that. So it's all about creating the right target to connect to your backend systems, no matter if it's on premises or in the cloud. If you want to use PowerShell remoting, maybe if you want to connect to a Chia endpoint and then run the scripts from there, all the stuff you can do. And you can combine targets into collections, which means, especially for like housekeeping processes, if you have 200 servers where you want to every weekend archive logs and then afterwards delete them, then you could put all these 200 machines into a collection, which later on is much easier to just select the collection instead of selecting all these 200 machines. So this is something that you can do here as well. And what you also can do is, depending on how big your organization is, or how big the group of people or groups of people are that working with PowerShell, you might want to kind of make sure that the Azure guys are not playing around with the scripts and the credentials from the Exchange team, for example. And so this is something that you could do here with ScriptRunner as well. So inside of ScriptRunner, you could have this, let's say, multi-team structure. So to make sure that these different teams are not messing around with the scripts and other objects, like credentials or like targets. So we have the scripts, we have credentials, we have targets. And with this, we can create what we call action. And so the actions are kind of bringing all that different bits and pieces together. So if we say, okay, the use case would be creating a new Azure VM, which also means it could be VMware or whatever, then we could look at this one here, for example. And I'm still in the admin context, and I could say, okay, let's see how that runs here. And so what we see here are obviously 4 parameters, and we see also the parameter names here. So the name, the images. What you also can see is here, I select the locations, and I only have 3 that I can select, and I have 2 VM sizes, which especially for Azure is quite important. So to make sure people are spinning up the monster VMs and ending up with an invoice with 10,000 euros or crowns at the end of the month. So this is an example, like, okay, this is how this action and this use case could be looked like. So now if we're looking into how that's actually be configured, we find out that, of course, we have many more parameters being available here. Like, okay, what's actually the resource group name? In this case, it has been automatically standardized on, okay, that's the resource group name, and then it's hidden from the user because we didn't see it, because this is something, okay, this user or this group of users are only able to create VMs in this resource group. For others, it might be another resource group. The nice thing about this scenario is you don't have to change anything in your script. It's just the configuration part here that might change from resource group Sweden to resource group UK or to whatever. And you just hide it and say, okay, for this group of people, they are responsible for this region. So this is just pre-configured. Anything else they don't see. And if you think about other scenarios, it's just the same, like creating new users. In what kind of OU are they able to do things or to create reports or whatever? It's really about standardizing, thinking about what kind of information, what kind of infrastructure part they should be able to do things, and everything else they're just not able to do. And so what we also saw here, so here in this case, this is the validate set about the images. And we have these two examples regarding location and VM sizes. So instead of having an input field where I would have to type in, okay, this is West Europe or North Europe or East US or whatever, it is simply just a drop-down list where the user can select from. And the list is populated with these locations that you want them to be able to select. The same is true for the sizes, right? Instead of typing, okay, this would be, I don't know, standard D2, V2, whatever. Of course, the users don't know this and they don't need to know it because they just have this list of available options. And these available options are coming from the queries. And I'm going to show you that. And these queries can be as simple as what we just saw, which are really just static lists of saying, okay, these are the VM sizes. And so that's what I see as a user on the left side. And that's on the right side, that's always the things that really is being used when we execute the scripts. So the technical information, so to speak, for the commandlet. And the same is true for the locations here, for example. Again, so here on the left side, that's what I see as a user, right? This is the information that's being used actually when the script is executed by ScriptRunner. And this is really a very, very simple example. It could be a scripted query, for example, to get a list of all my Office 65 users, which is then, of course, a dynamic thing to give me back all that information where I say, okay, this on the left side, again, these are my users. On the right side, this is what I'm going to use when I'm running the script. Now, in this case, having this cloud resources in the background, I don't want the user to wait until, okay, the script run and get the information back from the Azure AD and stuff like that. That's why, for example, you can schedule that. You can say, okay, there is a cache. So whenever a user is opening up an action and information is being used, we have at least the information that is from the last 2 hours, and maybe it's even more accurate, or you have more newer information. So, which means it just helps you with the user experience. The user don't have to wait; they get some information at the moment when they start using it. And then you might have created that action and say, okay, and now, okay, instead of that people are ringing the phone or writing an email, or I get something in the ITSM system, please spin up a new VM. I could think about taking this action and starting to delegate that. And then I could say, okay, I'm delegating it to my help desk in EMEA, or to a team in a particular region or whatever, or to multiple teams. And then as a result, and now I'm switching kind of roles, looking at, okay, what would be the case if I'm an end user or somebody in help desk, and then that could be that, okay, this person sees this tile here, which is exactly the same content that we just saw in the admin context, and then I'm clicking on that, and I see exactly the same thing. It's more simplified. I don't show the name of the parameters because that's not relevant for this kind of people, and they can select and start the process if everything is done correctly. Now, in this case, obviously, the name is mandatory as a parameter, so I have to type in something. Let's say PowerShell. That might take a little bit. That's why I'm clicking here on start, and I'm showing you, because I did that just before the session. So once that's finished, I prepared something here. You can see, okay, this could be a result after this VM has been created. Now, this is very technical and a lot of stuff, and maybe you want to make that easier and just some part of the information. You can do that. This is exactly what you can do with this variable that I mentioned earlier on, this SRX environment variable. You can say, okay, I only want to have the name and the size, and maybe just a success message saying, okay, this VM with this name has been created successfully. And the nice thing about this process is, because it's ScriptRunner who's actually is running the scripts, you can go to the dashboard and you can see what actually happens. So I can go, for example, to this list view here, and I can say, okay, this is the one that where is it? This is the one I just started before the session. So it's finished. So that's why I'm going to show you that first. That shows, okay, I can look into the report and I can see, okay, there was this user Tina. She started this action, and this action to create a new VM. And this is the target that has been used. And that is the credential. Here we see all the parameters, the ones that was typed in by the user, plus the things that are coming from the background, so to speak, like this information. And then you see all the details about creating that VM and stuff like that. And so you have the full information about these activities. In this case, it was a manual one. You can see here there is also scheduled activities. And there also might be, and we're going to take a look at this as well, there might be something that happened based on a REST API. All this information is also becoming part of this dashboard, and you can see what happened. And so this is kind of the technical information. What you also can see when we look at the portal again is like, you might want to show, most probably to your boss, okay, what are the benefits of automating this and this processes? So what we have here is an efficiency dashboard where you can see how much time and money actually been saved by automating this and this processes, which means for each use case, you can define, okay, what is the amount of time that is being saved by automating that compared to the manual approach. And then that's being calculated here, and you can export that as a PDF and send it to your boss, or whatever you want to do with it. So this is another nice thing. So let's see if, okay, it's still running, but it doesn't matter. What I want to show you as well is, now this is already, I think, pretty easy for a user, but it could be even easier, because you could take this action to create a new VM and integrate that into an existing website, into your self-service portal, into a SharePoint site or whatever. So we have the exact same properties, this exact same parameters and validation checks, but it is even easier for the user to use that, because it's just like, okay, you're taking this you're providing this information where the user already is, right? So if you look at this, the user, of course, they don't need to know anything about PowerShell. And in this case, they don't even know that there are some ScriptRunner things going on, because it's just an input parameter, input form to getting the job done. That's it. But you can still have using all that backend functionality and parameter checks and stuff like that, and the scripts. So that, again, I think makes it even easier to do that and to work with that. Of course, so this is the manual approach of doing things. Another way, of course, is having this scheduled approach. And interesting enough, just recently, I have really a couple of companies coming to us and start, okay, okay, this manual approach is nice, but we want to start with centralizing the scheduled stuff, because at the moment we have them all decentralized using the Windows Task Scheduler, and we never know if it's really running or not. So we want to start with this, which is, of course, something that you can do as well, which could be then an action, could be a scheduled one, and it can be one that somebody can use manually as well. So it's if you want to have a run now functionality, like, okay, I need this report now, and not just next Friday, you could do this as well. And then here, you could say, this is a process that I'm going to run maybe only on weekends. And if something goes wrong, I want to get some notification So you configure this as well. So this would be something for creating scheduled tasks, which is, as I said, the one of the things that you can do, of course, as well, and combine them also with the manual approach, of course. And the third one would be to really using our automation connectors, so and allowing other systems to talk to ScriptRunner. So in this case, I have a PATG monitoring system running, and I'm allowing the system to talk to ScriptRunner. It has to authenticate, because based on that, we can check if this machine is allowed to trigger the action, which means the script that they want to. And then as a result, for example, if there is a sensor detects an error, and I just did that, also tested this just before the session, is like there could be, in this case, a PATG machine that tells us, okay, there is a service down on a particular machine. So we're taking some variables from this, obviously, of course, to get that information, and then in this case, just push it into a Teams channel. Plus, of course, hopefully really solving the problem. So because this is just the information about the issue, right? But this is just an example. It could be a Power App. It could be, we have customers combining that with SAP or with ServiceNow or with SharePoint workflows. And then you really have this 3 different ways of using ScriptRunner and having that centralized approach and knowing about what's actually happening in the background. And then, of course, it's just about, okay, what's next? So I just showed you this Azure example. Another one could be maybe you want, I mentioned that, I think, before, you want to enable somebody in HR. If somebody calls in sick, they should be able to just create an out of office notification, and it should be not just anyone. It's a template, and because it's a daytime parameter, we have this daytime picker that makes it easy just to select that. We have the users here that they can select. Again, maybe somebody is not able to see all the users because they, again, just responsible for a particular part. Then that's how you control that with a query as well. Again, nothing has to be changed in the scripts. And what's also nice about these queries, which I can show you in combination with Active Directory, is this could be cascading queries, which means first maybe a user is selecting an OU, and then once that's done, the second query says, okay, now I'm showing all the groups from this selected OU, and then I'm selecting the group, and then I see the members of this group. In other cases, this could be, the first selection could be my ESX server, and the second one could be my VMs, and the third one, the available snapshots, because somebody should be able to maybe restore a snapshot. Again, so this is something that really makes it very easy for the user, because they're just really selecting, so hopefully no errors. And it's about you to manage and to decide what they're able to see, which means if there is a person that is by default only responsible for EMEA, of course, this would be a default value. You would hide that, because then automatically this person or this group of people would only see the groups from this EMEA OU. So which again would more simplify the whole process. And again, nothing has to change in the script. You could just copy this action and say, okay, this is the action for, in this case, out of office or for whatever, for the group EMEA. This is the action for the group North America, and this is the group for the action for the group Asia. And it's the same script. It's the same credential that's being used in the background, but it's a different selection. It's a different. The frame is just different depending on what kind of people you have there to work with that. And so and another thing that I would like to show you is there could be also scenarios where you have things, of course, you want to manage on your clients. So for example, users should be able to clean their Teams cache. At the moment, unfortunately, there's no button in Teams. And if you want to clean the cache, there are multiple folders that you have to go through and stuff like that. So what I have here is a Windows 10 machine, and there is an action that says clean the local Teams cache, and I can run that. And so what happens in the background is then hopefully it's going to close my Teams application down here. That's hopefully happening. We'll see. And then doing all that, going through that folders and cleaning the cache, and then coming back with a message like, okay, I have successfully okay, okay, it's a little fancy. So it says, okay, this has been done on my machine, and this is the IP address, which means, of course, it's the script ran on ScriptRunner, remoted into that machine, and that's possible because we have this information, and I showed you that in an example just earlier. We have this SRX environment variable that contains. I should write it correctly, maybe. Yes, you can do it. That gives you just information like, okay, what was the started IP address? So which I, of course, in this case for this script, I just translated into the host name and then remoted into this machine and did whatever was scripted into that script. And so this information can be helpful for this use cases or for any other use cases where you want to just change or maybe modify the behavior of a script depending on who started it and from what IP address, for example, that has been started. So this is something that I wanted to show you as well. And so we have the manual approach, we have the scheduled approach, we have the REST API approach, and really, so it's about having all these bits and pieces in a central place, like the scripts, the credentials, the queries, and also maybe something that is interesting when it comes to simplify the way you manage and write your scripts. I'm going back to the edit mode here because, I mean, there's the script that does the actual job, like creating something. But there are, of course, there might be functions that you want to use in your main script. And instead of having this maintained in multiple scripts, you could say, okay, I have my library scripts where I have all the functions that I need for Azure, or I have all my functions to connect, disconnect, do things in SQL, for example. I put them into a library script. And so what you can do here is you can say, okay, before the actual main script is started, I have a list, or maybe one, or maybe multiple library scripts that I want to preload. So when the main script is calling this function, it's just there. And this is what you can achieve here with this library script options. Also could be actually, it also could be a particular module if it's not something that you already have done with your target, because this is another thing that, of course, is coming with the target. Let's say to be able to do something in Azure, the Azure module itself is being loaded automatically with the target. So again, this is no logistic stuff that you need to maintain in your scripts. And the same is true for these functions that you can put into this library scripts, which simplifies the process because you only have one place where you have to maintain these functions and add new functions. And then in every action that you want to use that function, this library, you just add the library script as a preloaded option, and then that's it. And by the way, as we are here in the options page, if you want to switch from PowerShell, Windows PowerShell to PowerShell 7, you could do this, and as long as it's just Windows, it's just there, because when you install the solution, we bring a PowerShell 7 implementation with us. And of course, if it would be Linux, then of course it would be you would have to have a target with the SSH key connected, so you can connect to this Linux box or boxes in the background. All right. So with this, I would say that was pretty much what I wanted to show you. So so my plan would be, I'm looking at your questions now, and then we're going to make the raffle, because this is not really surprisingly, I would say. We would do that raffle by using a ScriptRunner action, which I hopefully I have here. Yes, it's here. So this is going to happen afterwards. So now I'm going to take a look at the questions that we have in the chat that I haven't answered yet. So we had questions regarding okay, the password server. So I'm going to look at the password state for sure. Self-service. Okay, you're looking for. Okay, maybe you want to make implement your own tests. So maybe this would be a good idea while I'm scrolling through the questions, maybe to show you what you could do next if you say, okay, what Heiko told me that doesn't sound too bad. Maybe I want to get some hands-on experience. You can go to our website and download a 30-day trial license, trial version. Maybe it should be the name of the session instead. Yeah, well, maybe. Okay, how does ScriptRunner handle errors? Do they have include and clean up inside the script that might produce the error? Okay, so when there's a script that creates an error, there are multiple ways to handle that. So we have this result message again that you can use to write information into the dashboard and into the reports that we have here. So let's say here we had an issue with connecting to O65. So we have this report information that this is something that you can control based on the variable, and then we have that native, let's say, PowerShell information that you get here. Plus, we have a ton of information that we write into the Windows event log, and also we have additional log files in the background that gives you even more in detail about what happened, which is, for example, right here. Which gives you real detail about the behavior. But to have, let's say, the first level, it's really about having the report in the dashboard and using the result message information to get the right data that you want to use for really finding out what went wrong. If there is an error in the script itself, like in this case, there's something missing in the script itself, then we detect this, of course, which means if something like this happens, automatically the action itself gets disabled until this problem has been solved, which is, of course, in this case, it's a syntax error. So, but if it's a logic error, then of course this is something that you would control within your script. So that's what's happening in this case. Then of course, yeah, try catch, of course. So of course, many things that you do here still, of course, apply to how you're writing your scripts and what you do with your PowerShell development, so to speak. Then there's a question, might be multiple steps that need to be reverted, so maybe a single try. Okay, this still goes back to the error approach. Yeah, so this is a good point about the programmer, and so it's really, so we're providing help so we have this sample scripts and we detect errors in the scripts and we have this logging, but of course it's still helpful if you have someone who's really knowing how to write the scripts and then really using ScriptRunner to make it available and accessible to people who are definitely not the PowerShell experts and the coding guys, but really using it maybe throughout the whole organization.
Could I just give a scenario just as an example?
Yes, sure.
So let's say that you create a user and you create a home folder. This is just a stupid scenario, but just to illustrate the issue. So let's say that you create the home folder first and then you create the user, but if something errors out in creating the user and you want to remove the home folder as well. So, and this is just 2 steps. So let's say that this onboarding process is like 10 steps. Then you're going to have to revert like 9 things if you have to do that in a process. So it's more like, how do you like do this in a good maintainable manner without like introducing like, okay, am I in step 1, am I in step 2, and then adding more and more and more in the steps to revert all the actions.
Yeah, so that's a good question, because this would be kind of a let's say an early warning system. If step 1 failed, don't start step 2, right? So which in our case would be something where you could have multiple actions, where let's say the action for step 2 and step 3 would kind of constantly check, maybe, for example, a flag in a database saying, okay, there's a flag that tells this second action, okay, step 1 has been successfully started, and only then the second step is able to run. We have that for customers, typically not for the manual approach, but for scheduled approaches. We have, for example, we have a customer who's it's about archiving mailboxes from people who left the company, where this archiving process can take maybe 10 minutes, but could be 10 hours, depending on how big this mailbox is. And then after that, they want to delete it, or they want to flag it as deactivated or something like this. And then in this case, this is what I just described, is something that happens there, that this second process constantly kind of monitors, okay, is the first step finished? And if that's the case, then step 2 starts, and then maybe step 3 starts. And the flag could be as easy as a log file in a folder, but of course, more secure and better way would be to have maybe some database where this information is stored, and then it can be used to check if that step has been successfully finished. So this would be one way of having this multiple step approach. What the way that we position ScriptRunner is, and that's maybe also important, we don't want to be the workflow solution number 227. So what we see with customers, like having this for example, where we have this 2-step approach or multiple steps, is when it comes to approval processes, where we say, okay, our recommendation is, okay, you could do this in SharePoint or in any kind of workflow system. And then once that approval has been done, and so then ScriptRunner comes into the picture to actually execute all the stuff, to build the user, change the group memberships, or whatever is necessary. But so you can have this, of course, these checking mechanisms to find out if the previous steps had been successful. Does this answer your question somehow? Maybe? Yes, no?
Yeah, we can probably talk about it more if we go ahead.
Yeah, we can always have, of course, I would be happy to have an offline discussion for this particular use case, which, by the way, brings me back to maybe bore you with another slide that I have in my slide deck, which includes, I don't find it anymore. Okay, maybe that's a sign. Maybe no more slides, or maybe that's so if you want to, maybe we could always, if you have particular questions with your use case or your infrastructure, we can always arrange in an individual session, of course. So I'm going down the questions. User account information. So the question about, okay, how the credentials is being the credentials are being used. I guess that's how the that's the question, I guess, is, of course, if you have a password server, then ScriptRunner is really just consuming the information, and so there is no information stored within ScriptRunner. When it comes to the delegation, so the people are logging into ScriptRunner, if that's the question, then of course that could be Active Directory users, it could be Azure Active Directory users, it could be claim-based identities, or it could be even local users, which happens not really often. And then, of course, this user information and the way around GDPR and logging should be, of course, should be done in Active Directory itself. If it's about creating a user, an account, and maybe deleting an account in Active Directory with a remove script, of course, then that's something again that where we come back to the report that we have there that shows, okay, what has been done in detail with that script. And if it's a remove script, then we will see, okay, the user XYZ has been deleted. If that's a process again that needs approval, then the thing applies that I said earlier on, where we say, okay, if there is an approval necessary to do, for example, a deletion of a user or anything else that might be crucial, then that's something that we see in a SharePoint workflow, or maybe it's in a Power App or whatever system. And then once the approval has been done by somebody or by a machine, whatever, then ScriptRunner is executing once it's approved. Integration to Git. Okay.
Sorry, this is Dennis. This is my question.
Yes.
So ScriptRunner keep tracks of all the users doing these things as tracing logs. So those logs will contain user information, right?
It depends. So it will at least, yes. So if we go back to the dashboard, it will at least contain the information about. Okay, this is a scheduled one. This doesn't make sense. Go back to this. So if it's a user like this one here, right? So there was this user, and so who started the action. So this information is there, but there's no further information. It's really just it's like the active, because when I'm going back here you can see, okay, this is the user that has been logged in. So that's why we get this information right here. The logs itself, by the way, by default, they are revolving. So there are these reports, I think we keep them for 90 days or something.
Okay, thanks.
All right.
That was my question. How long you keep the logs?
Yeah, okay.
Okay,
I see. Yeah, okay. So by default, we have a limitation in the solution. In other cases, and this really depends, I guess, also on the industry, we have customers saying, okay, oh, we need to keep that reports longer. And then we have a possibility that additionally to our report, you could take this data into your SQL database and keep it for whatever time frame you need based on your compliance regulations. That would be another possibility. Okay, yeah, GitHub, the Git integration. This is actually just another. Well, it's another use case for a scheduled action. So what happens for, like in this one here, so here I have a scheduled action that kind of every hour looks into a particular GitHub repo. So what happens here, it's not a proactive, like if somebody moves a script from testing to production branch, it automatically becomes available in ScriptRunner. It's a scheduled process where you can say, okay, I have a process where maybe once a day, if there is something new, I want to make it become productive in ScriptRunner. And so what happens here is that you configure, okay, what is my source? What is my repo that I want to look at? What is the branch that I want to look at? What is the folder on ScriptRunner where this new scripts or maybe modified scripts should be stored, and that simply happens with the Windows Git client on this machine. And then and the script who does that actually also comes from our GitHub repo. It's not under action packs, but you find it under extension packs. But and there you find a script and also a description, what kind of parameters are there and how to use it. So here is this one for Git that says, okay, what parameters we have here and how can you use this. Requirements for ScriptRunner. Okay, another good question. I like your questions. This is really cool. I like this being interactive. That's really cool. So the best way to find out, okay, what do you need actually to start with ScriptRunner is going to our page, and there is a installation manual that gives you the system requirements regarding the software and the hardware. Software-wise, Windows Server plus IIS, because the front end is by default is based on IIS. And then here you see the hardware requirements. And then of course this is just good for if you're starting and you want to test it. If you're somewhere down the line ending up with 200 actions and maybe 100 of them are scheduled and running every day or every hour, then of course you want to have another machine or maybe multiple machines, which brings us to the point of high availability, load balancing, stuff like that, which you could do as well, of course. So, but these are the default hardware and software requirements if you think about starting to test ScriptRunner yourself. Fault tolerance. So having multiple ScriptRunner backends, of course, you could use. We still also support active passive cluster, which I think nobody would ever really want to use. So typically we see installations based on having that with load balancer, or we also have really customers that says at one point in time, typically not at the beginning, but kind of splitting up the scheduled actions from the manual and maybe REST API actions, because maybe if the customer says, okay, I have 200 actions that are running scheduled all the time, I don't want this to be interfering with if users are doing something, or if I have a REST API calls coming in to do something. So this would be another way of scaling the environment. Okay, how does PS remoting play out with the local machine? Thinking about dependencies such as PowerShell 7 and or C# assemblies. So in general, of course, the ScriptRunner behavior is pretty much the same as if you would run your scripts native with PowerShell, right? So if you have a remoting target, let's just go in here. If you have a remoting target, so number one, it's about, the question is, okay, what kind of target should that be? If it's PowerShell 7, it would be SSH, for example, or maybe for sim sessions. And if we go for the standard way, then of course, for example, you would have to, well, number one, it's about, okay, what's the machine, right? This machine, whatever. And then it's about, okay, what credential am I going to use to do something over there? Or whatever. And then it's about how to connect. So by default, it would be WASman. But if you have other scenarios and maybe you would like to use a jump host, for example, you could do this as well. Or if you would have GIA endpoints where you want to do something, then you could configure this here as well. This again is really like all the stuff that you can do natively with PowerShell. In this sense, you could put into ScriptRunner and configure the targets exactly how you want them to be running. And if there is a particular, for example, if there are dependencies like modules or stuff like that, which is another way of maybe scaling, you could say, okay, if I have a scenario where I would need in the long run maybe 50 different modules because I want to go to VMware and to AWS and to Google and to Azure and whatever, what customers tend to do then is really saying, okay, we're having a separate box where all the modules are installed, and so the scripts are being executed over there where the modules are, and so it's not something that is occupying, so to speak, ScriptRunner machines, which could be a way to also solve issues when it comes to, for example, maintaining the modules. Okay, so here is a question regarding Hosh Pester, can ScriptRunner display unit? Okay, this is a question I have to do some homework and ask somebody who knows that, because I cannot answer that question on the top of my head. I have to admit I haven't worked a lot with Pester, so if that's okay, I'm just taking that question. And if you might, maybe you want to contact me on Twitter, you can Can you see it here? I don't know, at Heiko Brenn, and then maybe I can keep in touch with you, and I will try to get the answer for that. Can ScriptRunner be configured using DSC? Yes, yes. You can if you're using DSC and installing the necessary modules and so on a ScriptRunner machine, you could DSC as well. What language is ScriptRunner written in? Oh, that's a secret. No, I think it's well, there's a lot of PowerShell involved because we have our own also our own PowerShell hosts, of course, and then there is things like C# in the background, stuff like that. What happens if the connection to the backend server is broken mid-run? Good question. So we have, you can configure timeouts in your actions, saying, okay, if for example, it takes too long, like more than 60 seconds or something like this, then you could control it in the action. And then within ScriptRunner, there is a timeout as well. Like, I don't know, top of my head, maybe, I don't know if it's 10 minutes or something. At the moment, there is no, if this part of the question, if there's no automatic retry at the moment, this is something that we want to implement. But so at the moment, if there is a connection not working, we will skip that connection. What is quite interesting, because I mentioned that target collections, because here you could decide what should happen if let's say you have a housekeeping process and you go through 200 machines and on one machine there is an issue, then you could decide, okay, do I want to just skip that machine and continue with the rest, or should I stop the whole process? This is something that you could use here within this target collection functionality, for example. Yeah, so as I said, so at the moment there is no retry queue, so to speak, for these processes. So today you would be the thing would be to restart that that action, so to speak, or if it's a scheduled one, of course, if the next scheduled time is reached, then of course it would run again. Using jobs and remote jobs. So this, which also I think relates to the scheduling part and automatic execution. So our customers typically, if they use ScriptRunner, really tend to put all that stuff into ScriptRunner and make it scheduled parts. Of course, if you what is important to understand, of course, here is it always depends on in which kind of context the scripts are being executed. So we have it's either impersonated, or you could have run it into in a particular in the context of a particular user, and then if there is a job configured that is available there, you could trigger this as well. But it's not something that happens on a regular basis, I would say. Then there's another question, maybe you have already told us, but is there an API that you can use to configure as an admin and also script as a user? An API to configure something inside of ScriptRunner, if that's the question, the answer, okay, the answer at the moment is no. But we have a couple of companies asking for that, so kind of making manipulation, so to speak, to the existing ScriptRunner configuration from the outside world, where theoretically maybe ScriptRunner only become an engine to do all the ScriptRunner stuff, but you want to control that from the outside. So this is something, it's not there at the moment, and I cannot tell. I don't know if this is going to be there, let's say in 6 months or what time frame, but it's something we look at. That's all I can say at the moment. Okay,
but
another question.
A question here is there an API for the user part? Can I, as a user, start a script from an API? Or
yes, I mean, for this case, you could use the same thing that we have here for the automation connector, which is basically actually what happens in the background in the simplest part, so to speak, is there is also an example script that comes with the solution that shows, okay, what do we need in order to get a connection to ScriptRunner, which is basically creating some JSON data and send that to ScriptRunner with the right credential, and then you could trigger this action. So so this could be a way, or this is of course the default way to trigger actions and scripts from the outside, and it could be, yeah, I mentioned these different examples like monitoring system, workflow system, or whatever. But of course, it could be also something in your application where a user would be triggering something and typing in something, and then starting the connection to ScriptRunner and telling us, okay, what's the name of the action? What are the parameters? What are the parameter values that are necessary to start this action successfully? The difference between this approach, of course, and for example, this one here is like saying, okay, I have this action already in a user environment. The trigger is here, of course, all the validations, all the parameters and all queries you can use here. Whereas if you go along this line, of course, it's your responsibility on the application side to make sure the validations are there so that the action is really able to trigger this action successfully, which might be an additional effort to make that possible on the source side of things, so to speak. But of course, technically, yeah, that's something that of course would work. There is, by the way, I haven't mentioned that, bad me. So we talked about this REST API. Now there is another way of kind of getting information across to ScriptRunner saying, okay, please start this action, which could be an email. We have what we call an email inbound connector, where you can configure an email mailbox that we constantly monitor, and then if there is an email coming in that has the right format and the right information, like again, action name, parameters, stuff like that, then it could be another way to trigger the execution of scripts, which is being used for organizations where they have, let's say, legacy systems that are not RESTified, and then that could be a way to do this as well. Okay, when running against several backends, are they sequential or parallel? So each processing of a script happens in its own sandbox. So you can have multiple running at the same time, which if the backend allows it, right? So if you have Office 365 and or Exchange Online, of course there are limitations regarding the parallel sessions. And then if that's being reached, of course, then you will get an error. But from the ScriptRunner side, things are running in parallel. Yes. All right. Okay. So the question is, should we start the raffle? Oh, there's another question. Are you required to use a service account, or is it possible to use Carol's constraint delegation?
Should I explain that question?
Yes, please.
Are you required to use the service account when you execute the script, or can you use them in the user context?
Do you mean when you use a particular target inside of our solution?
Yeah, let's say I have a user that's supposed to run a specific script. Mm-hmm. Can the task be run as that specific user onto the backend?
Yeah. So this depends on how you configure the target. So let's say that would be this one here. So what you could say is, okay, I want to run a particular script in the context of exactly this user, because maybe we see this sometimes because some modules require some information from a profile folder that is not there by default, because when we run it, because the service in the background is in the local system context. But then you could switch that into, for example, this run as mode, and then this environment informations become available, and then you could run it in the context again of this user, for example. Yeah. And we see this once in a while. And the main reason in most cases really are some particular modules that are maybe not being developed with the idea of there could be a machine running that module, and because they think it's always going to be in a user context with the profile. Okay, how much of the UI is available for the users? I mean, that really depends on how you configure the action, right? So like in this case, this user here, if I'm going to all the actions, has quite a number of actions, but that's only because inside of my ScriptRunner configuration, I have configured for, I think, what is it? Maybe it's this one. No, it's not this one. Help desk, where's help desk? This one, for example. So here, because here in 29 actions have been delegated to this group of people. That's why I see all these actions. But this really depends on the use cases, right? So it could be just one or two. And then the question, what information they are able to see, that is really something that you control in the configuration of each and every action. Which means, okay, if I want to enable the user, like what we had before with the Azure VM, I want them to be fully free with selecting all kinds of regions, then that's of course up to you. Typically, it's the other way around. Organizations try to narrow down the options, so it's really according to the company's guidelines and processes and stuff like that. And then if you have done that, then as I said, it also could be something like this, because it's just another action. What happens here is it's the same action as it would be in our own portal. It's just an iframe where you say, okay, this action 158, which is the one obviously for creating a new VM, that becomes available in this user interface. So this is how you can control that. And the grouping of actions, it's a good question. You might have seen, if we go back here, you might have seen that, okay, maybe I have Azure and I have Azure AD, and maybe I have actions for Exchange Online. They all can be grouped automatically. So we're having an internal tagging mechanism, which starts with the folder names where you put the scripts in, and these folder names become tags, which means by that you can say, okay, I'm grouping all my Exchange actions, my Azure actions. You can work with different color schemes, as you see here. So you could also say, okay, I want to have all my actions being orange, all my Exchange actions being green, so that for the user, it might be, it becomes easier to memorize, especially if they don't work with this day in, day out. And plus you can have that icons here for particular platforms maybe. But the first thing really is using these tags, which are applied and which starts with the script. So once I have a script, let's say for Exchange, I can see, I should see, did I write? No, it's, okay. So here I see, for example, here I have my Azure tag. And so these tags automatically become available as tabs, which kind of groups the action for Azure into one single tab, for example. Yeah. All right. Any more questions?
I have one single question, if that's okay.
Yes. Yeah, sure.
Is it possible to like have a multi-tenancy function in the administration GUI? Let's say I'm the supervisor of this tool, the ScriptRunner. Can I delegate that the SQL team, they're allowed to manage their tasks, and I have another Active Directory team that are allowed to manage their tasks?
Yes.
But they can't interfere with each other. So if the SQL team has a service account, for example, the Active Directory guys can't reach that account.
Yes, absolutely. That's what you can do with, let's say I would create a new credential. That's what you can do exactly with this functionality here. So each object inside of ScriptRunner, credentials, scripts, targets, actions, or whatever, you can say this is you have two options. One is it's called public use, which means every admin who is able to log into the ScriptRunner user interface sees that object. Or you could say, no, this credential belongs to the Azure team. And so what happens if I'm logging in as a member of the Azure team, I will see all the objects that are in public use, plus the ones that are mapped to my Azure team. And that's exactly how you can make sure that the Azure team is not able to see my credentials from the Exchange team or from the SharePoint team, or maybe it's split up by regions or whatever. So this is the way how you can control that with what we call kind of a multi-team or team admin. So if we go, maybe I can show you that here. If we create a delegation within ScriptRunner, there are 4 levels. So one is the main, or are the main admins. They just see everything. And the thing that we just talked about is this Teams admin. And this Teams admin would be exactly like what you described. There are the objects for the SharePoint team, for the Exchange team, for the Azure team. So still the main admin would see everything, or the main admins. And the team admins would only see their objects plus the one that are mapped as public use. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Welcome. All right. So shall we start the raffle? I think so. No more questions? And you're still here, which is great. Well, we have 8:35. Excellent. All right. So any more questions? No. And if you have, let's say, if you have additional questions, just reach out to me. Maybe before we do the raffle again, I'll show you the page how you can reach me on Twitter or on LinkedIn, or okay, that's not the one. This one here. So you can reach me on Twitter, LinkedIn. If you have additional questions, I would be happy to get in touch with you. All right. Okay. So as I said, we have 2 Amazon gift cards to give away, worth 25 euros. And I would start. So all of you who have, obviously, because you're here, you have registered, I'm having in this CSV file. And so what we're using in the background, of course, is PowerShell and get random with a little bit stuff around it. And so I will start the raffle for the first winner. So here we are. Okay. So the winner is Jonas Isaksson. Are you with us? I think he's not. So we have to find another winner. Or are you there, Jonas? No, I don't think so. So, okay, let's do another round. Dun, 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 dun. What do we have? Idris Nori. Are you with us? Doesn't look like it. Too bad. Okay, hopefully we get someone who is actually in the audience. Dun, 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 dun. Another one. Another one. Kenneth Hemstad. No. No. Okay. Okay. I hope you still have a little time. We hopefully will get someone who is in the audience. Christian Schrevlius Wiklund.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, excellent. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I will get in touch with you later on. So we know for which Amazon shop, for which country you would like to have the gift card, and then our marketing team will send it to you. Okay, so again, congratulations. So that was winner number 1. So let's take a look at if we find the second winner. All right, Uffe Ringblom. I don't see him in the audience. So another one. Woohoo! This takes longer than answering your questions. Okay, let's see who we have. Pontus Persson. Nope. Okay. We'll find our second winner. I'm sure. So let's see what's happening. Fredrik Karsmark. Hopefully it's the right pronunciation. I can see him in the audience. Okay. Congratulations. So I'm going to get in touch with you to see what kind of Amazon shop you would like to have the gift card for. So yeah, so we have found our 2 winners, which is awesome. And so yeah, it's time to say thanks for attending this session. It was great to have all these questions. There is some question coming in. Let me just see. Oops, I just want to switch back to actually this one. Just does it support UTF-8? UTF-8? Yes. Yeah. The question is, well, okay, what would be the use case to use that? But in general, that is something that you can use inside of ScriptRunner. Absolutely.
Yeah, but this must be with the BOM addition as well to handle foreign characters like Swedish or German.
Well, you could. Well, it's something that you can do natively with PowerShell. So
yes.
So it is part. So that's why I said so you can use it within PowerShell as well. And as we are coming from Germany, that's of course something we need to support for our, let's say, for our home market, of course. So
of course.
So the answer is definitely yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So thanks again for joining and having all these great questions. I really enjoyed it. It was a very active group. That's cool. And so we have this recording. Fredrik is going to load up the video to the YouTube channel, and you will get the information about it. And also I'll send you an email where you can get the presentation, the PDF, if you would like. And if you want to get into a more detailed discussion again regarding your requirements, please get in touch with me. We can always make another individual session, maybe talk about things in more detail. I'm happy to do that. So thanks again. I'm going to stop the recording now. I know how to do it.